Even though I was his master, I was about to feed my disciple a foul-smelling, toxic waste pill. The entire sect thought I wanted to poison him to death right then and there. But to my absolute surprise, my system instantly triggered a 10,000-fold return, rewarding me directly with a drop of god demon origin. After my disciple swallowed that waste pill, not only did he not die, but he actually awakened the unprecedented ancient desolate sacred body. He fell to his knees, kowtowing to me in tears of endless gratitude, swearing that he would go through fire and water for me and wouldn't hesitate to die 10,000 deaths for my sake. But little did he know, that was genuinely just a piece of trash pill, and I only wanted to exploit my system's loopholes. Right now, the air in the Great Hall was so heavy it made it hard to breathe, as sitting on both sides were 12 old men, the 10 perfected elders of the Azure Cloud sect, their spiritual energy surging as their gazes pierced into me like sharp knives. My name is Lu Chang'e, and the green robe I wore was washed so many times it had almost turned white. I looked decent enough, but unfortunately, in the cultivation world, being handsome didn't put food on the table, and they even despised me as a cultivation medium because I had absolutely zero cultivation base. Without caring about my image at all, I let out a lazy yawn, completely ignoring the terrifying pressure radiating around me that could easily crush an ordinary person into dust. The sectmaster of the Azure Cloud sect, Jawuji, sitting on the highest seat, finally spoke, his voice not loud but echoing like explosive thunder, causing the defensive formations of the entire hall to light up. Sitting high and mighty, the look he gave me was filled with undisguised greed and contempt. He looked at me and coldly asked how long I was going to remain so stubbornly blind. He sneered, adding that I had managed the solitary peak for 10 whole years without achieving a single thing. My cultivation had remained at a standstill, and I was still nothing more than a mere mortal. He aggressively stated that our Azure Cloud sect did not feed useless trash, finally baring his fangs as he pointed out that the solitary peak hadn't recruited a single disciple in 10 years. According to sect rules, he declared that if a peak lost its legacy, the peak master token must be confiscated, and I should roll out of the Azure Cloud sect. He mockingly told me that for the sake of our fellow discipleship, he could let me live out my life peacefully in the mortal realm as a wealthy man. The moment his words fell, all the surrounding elders began to sneer coldly, shouting at me to quickly kneel and thank the sect master. They mocked me for occupying a prime location without doing anything, claiming that leaving a supreme spirit vein like the solitary peak to a mortal like me was an absolute waste, and they demanded that I hand over the token immediately before they were forced to take action. Listening to their insults, I didn't even bother to lift my eyelids, cursing inwardly in my heart. I had transmigrated to this hellhole 10 years ago. And while other transmigrators got overpowered cheats, I started off as a destitute peak master with no talent and no system, making me a purely unlucky bastard. Why did my solitary peak have no disciples? Who would want to join a mortal's peak? I tugged the corners of my mouth into a nonchalant smile and calmly replied, Sect Master Zhao, the rules state that my solitary peak must be taken back because it has no disciples, but what if I accept a disciple today? Zhouji acted as if he had just heard the biggest joke in the world, letting out a wild burst of laughter as the terrifying pressure of his golden core stage exploded without reservation, cracking the floor tiles of the Great Hall. He stared at me with icy eyes and mocked, just based on you, a lowly piece of trash who can't even draw chi into your body? With his laughter fading into a sinister glare, he declared that today happened to be the sect's triennial disciple recruitment ceremony, and since there were plenty of geniuses outside, he would give me this chance. If you can recruit a disciple today, we will drop this matter. But if you can't, his eyes flashed with murderous intent, then don't blame me for executing you right here according to sect rules. Just as his voice fell, the heavy doors of the hall rumbled open, letting the sunlight pour in. Out in the square, hundreds of young men and women who had just passed the trials were standing there, their eyes burning with passion as they stared at the elders inside, clearly all promising talents with great potential. Zhao Wuji waved his hand and told me to begin my performance, leaning back in his chair with a face full of mockery, ready to watch a good show. All the elders crossed their arms, waiting to see a mortal embarrass himself by trying to take in a disciple. I took a deep breath and walked out unhurriedly, but the very moment my foot stepped over the threshold, a cold mechanical voice suddenly exploded in my mind like heavenly music. The voice announced that it had detected I was facing a life and death crisis. The activation conditions were met, and the 10,000-fold return system had been successfully bound. The rules were simple. By accepting a disciple and gifting them anything, I could trigger a random critical multiplier return, ranging from a minimum of 10 times to a maximum of 10,000 times, provided I recruited someone with an extremely miserable destiny. My footsteps abruptly stopped, and my heart began to pound wildly, realizing that after 10 whole years, my cheat had finally arrived. Giving away ordinary items to get divine treasures in return, and having to recruit a trash-tier disciple was practically tailor-made for me. I suppressed my wild ecstasy and my gaze swept across the hundreds of so-called geniuses in the square like a searchlight. Right now, in my eyes, all these guys were completely worthless because their talents were too good and their backgrounds too deep. Suddenly, my eyes stopped on a young boy at the very edge of the square who had been pushed to the ground. He was covered in wounds, his clothes torn to shreds, and his face deathly pale, while on his lower abdomen there was a shocking, gruesome wound, indicating his spirit root had clearly been brutally dug out. Everyone around him was holding their noses and backing away in disgust, whispering about how he was Ye Chen, the fallen genius from Heavenly Wind City. They gossiped that a few days ago, his supreme lightning spirit root caught the eye of the divine sun from the nine heavens sacred land, who sent people to rip it out directly. His fiancée saw him ruined and instantly defected to the divine sun, even ordering people to cripple his movement, leading the crowd to mock why such a useless cripple was even there. Hearing the surrounding mockery, Yichin gritted his teeth so hard they almost bled, his eyes turning entirely red as his fingernails dug deep into his own flesh. He was unwilling to accept this because his great vengeance remained unavenged and the humiliation pierced his heart. But right now, he was worse off than even a regular mortal. Just as he fell into total despair and was about to end his own life, my blue boots stopped right in front of him. The mockery in the square came to a dead halt, and inside the hall, Zhao Wuji and the elders froze in confusion, wondering what I was trying to do. I looked down at the trembling Ye Chen without any unnecessary nonsense, my voice calm but carrying an unquestionable dominance. Your spirit root was destroyed, your fiancé betrayed you, and the whole world looks down on you, I said softly. Ye Chen violently snapped his head up, staring dead at me. I hooked the corner of my mouth into a wildly arrogant smile and extended my right hand towards him. None of that matters. I only ask you one thing. Do you want to storm the nine heavens sacred land and make that divine sun pay the price? Do you want to make all those who looked down on you kneel trembling at your feet forever? Those two sentences struck Ye Chen's heart like a bolt of lightning. I do, I dream of it. His voice was as hoarse as a wounded beast, his eyes instantly welling up with tears. Very well. I retracted my hand and clasped it behind my back, telling him that from now on, he was the first disciple of my solitary peak and ordering him to follow me. For 3 seconds, there was a dead silence, but then the entire square and the great hall erupted into a roof-shattering roar of mockery and laughter. They called it hilarious that a mortal peak master was taking a trash with a shattered Dantian as his disciple, calling us a perfect match and a rare joke of the century. Zhouwuji sat on his high seat, laughing out of sheer anger as he praised my guts, declaring that since I had recruited a disciple, he would spare my life today. However, if your solitary peak comes in dead last in the sect tournament 3 months from now, not only will I take back the spirit vein, but I will make sure you and your disciple vanish completely, he threatened. I didn't even bother to turn my head. I just kept my back to everyone, waved my hand dismissively, and led the stumbling Ye Chen out of the square. Disciple, keep up and ignore the barking of these dogs, I told him. Half an hour later, at the solitary peak, which was as dilapidated as a graveyard dug up by wild dogs, Ye Chen knelt before my drafty thatched hut, looking at me standing with my hands behind my back. His heart was filled with both gratitude and despair, knowing that even if his master was immortal, I was the only one who gave him a place to belong at this desperate time. Coughing up blood and looking utterly pathetic, he apologized. Master, your disciple's Dantian is shattered. I am destined to be a useless person for the rest of my life. I have shamed you. I looked at him and didn't say much, rummaging around in my robes for a long time until I finally pulled out a pitch-black, foul-smelling pill. This was a discarded waste pill I had picked up at the bottom of the mountain a few years ago because nobody wanted it. I handed this impurity-filled, low-grade marrow-cleansing pill over and simply commanded, "Disciple, eat it," looking at the black, pungent pill I handed him. Ye Chen was stunned because even the lowest-grade marrow-cleansing pill shouldn't look like sheep dung and carry such an indescribable stench. This was clearly a highly toxic waste pill that had been ruined during alchemy who knew how many years ago, and if a mortal ate it, they would likely lose half their life. But Ye Chen looked up and met my calm, profound eyes, finding no disgust and no pity, only an unfathomable depth. He gritted his teeth fiercely, a look of absolute determination flashing in his eyes as he declared that he was already a useless person, treated like a plague by the world. And since I was the only one willing to take him in, his life belonged to me. Let alone a waste pill, even if it is a deadly poison, I will not frown, he declared, thanking me for the pill before kowtowing heavily. Without any hesitation, he stretched out both hands respectfully, took the black waste pill, and swallowed it in one gulp. As the waste pill entered his stomach, it instantly turned into a chaotic mass of scorching sludge, running wildly through his broken meridians, without any sign of healing. Instead, a piercing agony erupted from his shattered Dantian, causing him to let out a muffled groan, biting his lips so hard it bled while cold sweat poured down his forehead. Yet, at the exact same second, he swallowed the pill. The cold, beautiful mechanical voice of the system exploded in my mind, announcing that I had successfully gifted my eldest disciple Ye Chen a pill. The voice congratulated me for triggering the system's maximum critical multiplier of a 10,000-fold return, rewarding me with the supreme divine artifact, one drop of chaos god demon origin. As the system's prompt faded, I felt an indescribably terrifying aura suddenly appear in my system space. The chaos god demon origin was a primal force born at the beginning of chaos, containing the ultimate laws of destruction and creation. If a mortal refined just one drop, they would instantly shed their mortal body, be reborn, and achieve physical sanctification. My breathing stopped for a moment, and my heart beat like a drum as I realized a 10,000-fold critical hit right off the bat had turned a waste pill into a drop of chaos god demon origin that would make even great emperors go mad. Extract! Extract and refine it immediately. I roared wildly in my heart. In an instant, a drop of deep, dark gold energy, as profound as a black hole, merged directly into my glabella without the expected pain, as the system's empowerment was gentle yet incredibly overbearing. The moment the god demon origin entered my body, my mortal physique, which had seen no progress in 10 years, was torn apart and reconstructed like wet paper. A thunderous roar erupted from within my body, and my vitality shot straight into the heavens as I shattered the mortal realm. Chi condensation and foundation establishment stages like a hot knife through butter, reaching perfection in the blink of an eye. In just a single breath, the spiritual energy in my dantian wildly liquefied and condensed, and a massive golden core, completely dark gold and branded with the patterns of chaos laws, floated out. From early golden core to mid, late, and finally peak golden core, I shot up from a mere mortal to the absolute peak in a matter of seconds like a rocket. Moreover, what I had formed was the legendary Chaos Golden Core, immune to all laws and invincible among its peers. At this moment, even though on the surface I still looked like a mortal with no spiritual energy fluctuations, because the system automatically shielded my aura, my body hid enough raw power to blow up a mountain with a single punch. This was absolutely satisfying, proving that this was the treatment a transmigrator should have, and wondering why I should work hard when I could just exploit my disciple and lie back. Just as I was enjoying the rush, a miserable scream suddenly came from beneath my feet. I looked down and saw Ye Chen curled up on the ground, his whole body turning scarlet as the toxins from the waste pill had started to attack his heart, making it look like he was about to give out. I sighed softly, thinking that this disciple was good in every way, except his body was just too weak, and since he was my precious cash cow, I couldn't let him die on the first day. I slowly extended my right hand, gathering a tiny insignificant trace of the residual god demon origin aura in my palm, and gently pressed it onto the crown of Ye Chen's head. Disciple, hold your breath and focus your mind. Your master will help you break out of your cocoon and be reborn, I said softly. As my palm descended, that faint trace of chaos god demon aura rushed into Ye Chen's body as brutally as a primordial dragon. Wherever it passed, the toxins from the waste pill didn't even have a chance to react before being instantly crushed into nothingness. Immediately after, a miracle happened. As under the nourishment of this demonic divine energy, Ye Chen's dantian, which had its spirit root violently dug out, actually began to regrow at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even his entire physical strength, tempered by this aura, began to radiate a blinding dark gold divine light. The sky above the solitary peak changed colors, and faint phantoms of ancient gods and demons could be heard roaring in the clouds as endless golden Tao rhymes cascaded down like a waterfall, pouring madly into Ye Chen's body. What is this? Ye Chen suddenly opened his eyes, two beams of golden light shooting straight into the clouds. He felt that not only had his shattered dantian fully recovered, but it was now 100 times stronger than his previous supreme lightning spirit root. A terrifying sense of power filled his limbs and bones, making him feel as if he could punch a hole through the sky, and four massive words automatically surfaced in his mind. Ancient, desolate, sacred body. The legendary supreme physique that, upon reaching major completion, could shake immortals barehanded and cross the universe with pure physical strength, had actually awakened within him, a crippled loser. Ye Chen was completely and utterly dumbfounded, staring blankly at me, who was still standing there with my hands behind my back, looking as calm as the breeze, while his mind churned like a stormy sea. He realized the waste pill and mortal peak master facade were all lies, and the pill I casually gave was actually capable of rebuilding a dantian and awakening a supreme sacred body. With such a grand stroke, he believed that let alone the sect master of the Azure Cloud sect, even if the Holy Lord of the Nine Heavens Sacred Land came, he would have to kneel down and call me ancestor. Convinced his master was absolutely a peerless, supreme mighty figure playing games in the mortal world. He viewed those elders and the sect master, who mocked my low cultivation, as a bunch of blind frogs at the bottom of a well. Thank you, master, for the grace of recreation. Ye Chen is willing to go through fire and water for master in this life, not hesitating to die 10,000 deaths. Ye Chen trembled with intense excitement, tears streaming down his face as he unhesitatingly kowtowed 3 times to me, smashing deep pits into the floorboards with his newly acquired sacred body strength. Watching my eldest disciple's face full of fanaticism, realizing he had already started violently overthinking and brainwashing himself, I felt incredibly amused, but on the surface, I pretended to maintain an unfathomable demeanor. I went back and lay down on the broken rocking chair in the yard, picked up a cup of cheap cold tea next to me, took a sip, and said indifferently, "It's just basic operations. A mere sacred body is nothing to write home about." But right at this moment, a massive explosion suddenly came from outside the mountain gate as a deacon from the enforcement hall, sent by the sectmaster, had kicked the mountain gate to pieces. With a deafening crash at the entrance of Solitary Peak, the already tottering, dilapidated wooden archway and doors were instantly blasted into sawdust by a violent surge of spiritual energy. Amidst the billowing dust, 3 arrogant figures strode boldly into the courtyard, led by Wang Mong, a deacon of the enforcement hall, a man with mid-stage foundation establishment cultivation who walked sideways in the outer sect. "Lu Changge, you have a lot of nerve," he bellowed, declaring he was under orders to cripple my disciple's limbs and escort him to the 9 heavens sacred land. Drawing his long blade and pointing the sharp tip directly at my nose, Wang Meng sinisterly ordered me to immediately tie my own hands behind my back and follow him to the punishment hall to confess my crimes, or he would execute me on the spot. The 2 lackeys behind him also drew their swords with sinister sneers, thinking that coming to the Solitary Peak to deal with a supposedly powerless mortal and a crippled youth was basically free merit points. However, facing this murderous scene, I didn't even bother to lift my eyelids, choosing instead to look at the cup of cheap tea in my hand, now covered in a layer of dust from their entry, and frowned slightly. "My tea is dirty," I spat out a few words indifferently. "At a time like this, you still care about your garbage tea?" "You ungrateful wretch!" Wang Meng flew into a violent rage, the pressure of his mid-stage foundation establishment erupting instantly. Too lazy to speak further, he leaped high into the air, the long blade in his hand transforming into a flash of light as he ruthlessly chopped it down toward my head, actually trying to kill me right then and there. "How dare you touch my master?" A roar like a furiously provoked beast exploded in the courtyard, just a hair's breadth from disaster. Ye Chen, who had been kneeling in front of me just a moment ago, instantly had bloodshot eyes, determined to never allow anyone to harm the master who had granted him a second life. Ye Chen abruptly stood up, and without any flashy moves or even using a single trace of spiritual energy, he relied entirely on his newly awakened, ancient, desolate sacred body to stomp his legs fiercely onto the ground. The hard bluestone slabs were instantly crushed into a half-meter deep pit, cracks spreading out like a spider web. Borrowing this terrifying reactionary force, his body shot forward like a cannonball, instantly appearing right in front of me to face the descending blade aura. Reckless fool. Wang Meng's eyes were filled with cruelty, thinking that a cripple with a destroyed Dantian daring to block his foundation establishment blade with his bare flesh was purely seeking death. But in the very next second, Ye Chen clenched his 5 fingers tightly into a fist, and that fist, radiating a blinding, dark gold divine light, slammed brutally against the sharp edge of the long blade. With an ear-piercing screech of metal against metal, and right under the utterly horrified gazes of Wang Meng and his 2 lackeys, that mid-grade yellow-rank refined long blade was actually smashed into a sky full of flying fragments by Ye Chen's bare fist as easily as shattering ice. "What?" Wang Meng's pupils violently contracted, unable to comprehend how someone whose Dantian was supposedly destroyed could shatter a magical artifact with his bare hands and possess such terrifying physical strength. "Bastard, get out of here!" Ye Chen roared in fury, and his fist, carrying the momentum from shattering the blade and accompanied by a sonic boom, ruthlessly slammed into Wang Meng's chest. With a massive shock to his body, Wang Meng coughed up a spray of blood and flew backward like a kite with a broken string, smashing heavily through the courtyard wall. The entire courtyard fell into a deathly silence as the 2 lackeys dropped their jaws, their legs trembling uncontrollably like shaking sieves. They couldn't believe their eyes, wondering if they were hallucinating that Deacon Wang, a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator, was defeated in a single punch by a freshly admitted trash disciple, making Ye Chen seem less like a weakling and more like a humanoid tyrannosaurus. Cuff, cuff. From the ruins, Wang Meng crawled up with his hair disheveled, his chest completely caved in, his eyes filled with a mix of terror and deep resentment. "You bastard. You dare destroy my artifact and injure my Dao Foundation. I will make you pay the price." Wang Meng had gone completely mad as he forcefully activated a secret technique, spitting a mouthful of his origin blood onto a pitch-black talisman. Peak Tier 2 Killing Formation Talisman, Blood Lightning Heavenly Strike. "Go," he roared, and the talisman instantly self-ignited without wind. Above the Solitary Peak, a cloud of blood-colored lightning instantly condensed, and the terrifying pressure of heaven and earth crashed down, firmly locking onto Ye Chen. Although Ye Chen had awakened the ancient desolate sacred body, he had only just rebuilt his Dantian, and the gap in cultivation was obvious. Facing this world-destroying blood lightning, he felt a profound sense of fatal crisis. Yet he didn't retreat a single step, standing firmly in front of my rocking chair, determined to protect me even if his body was smashed to pieces. Despair. In front of a Tier 2 killing formation, no matter how strong your body is, you are still an ant. Wang Mang laughed maniacally as the bucket-thick, blood-colored wild lightning tore through the air, striking down furiously toward Ye Chen's head. But just as the lightning was less than 3 feet away from Ye Chen's head, a very light, very indifferent sigh suddenly echoed in the courtyard. This sound clearly wasn't loud, but I raised my right hand toward Wang Mang in midair and casually waved it. Boom! The very moment I waved my hand, an indescribably terrifying pressure, like a giant dragon awakening from a billion-year slumber, erupted out of my body without any reservation. Peak Golden Core stage. This overwhelming pressure was so strong, it materialized into visible golden shockwaves, instantly vacuuming the air within a 10-mile radius and increasing gravity thousands of times over. Crack! Crack! That supposedly menacing blood-colored heavenly lightning, when faced with this supreme peak Golden Core pressure, was like remaining snow-meeting boiling water. It didn't even last half a second before shattering inch by inch into nothingness in midair. What? Wang Mang's laughter came to a screeching halt, the expression on his face instantly freezing into the ultimate horror. He felt as if he wasn't facing a person at all, but a high and mighty god, and the terrifying oppression belonging to a peak Golden Core cultivator pressed down on his soul, like a primordial divine mountain. A peak Golden Core? Impossible! You are a mortal without a spirit root. How could you? Wang Mang screamed miserably, his eyeballs covered in bloodshot veins from extreme terror, wanting to beg for mercy and kowtowing, but he didn't even get the chance to open his mouth. The wind from my palm strike that I had casually slapped across space had already arrived. Bang! With a bone-chilling muffled explosion, without any resistance and without any flashes of light, right under the utterly blank stares of the 2 Enforcement Hall disciples and Ye Chen. The mid-stage Foundation establishment Deacon Wang Mang was hit in mid-air like a tomato smashed by an iron hammer. With a loud boom, his entire person, bones, flesh, and even his magical robes, was instantly blasted by this dimension-crushing power into a ripple of energy, completely vanishing and having his soul extinguished on the spot. As the breeze blew past, the aura dissipated. Thud! Thud! The legs of the 2 surviving lackeys turned into jelly as they fell heavily to their knees, a pungent smell spreading from them as they frantically smashed their heads against the broken bluestone floor, not even daring to breathe loudly. It was over just like that. Deacon Wang was obliterated by a casual slap from across space, proving that the peak master universally recognized by the sect as a weakling was actually a supreme master at the peak of the Golden Core stage. Ye Chen was thoroughly petrified as he looked up at the dissipating energy, then turned back to look at me, lying on the rocking chair, his heart pounding wildly and his blood boiling with absolute fervor. He realized his master was terrifyingly powerful to this extent, not only casually bestowing a divine pill that awakened his sacred body, but also obliterating a mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivator without even moving a finger. He thought that any sect elder or Nine Heavens divine son was utterly insignificant in front of his master. Inside the courtyard there was a deathly silence, and amidst the lingering energy ripples, I had unknowingly picked up a fresh cup of tea, blowing on the tea leaves and taking a light sip. My profound gaze shifted to the still shocked Ye Chen as I calmly said, "Disciple, remember this. When dealing with vicious dogs, you must use your full strength." With Wang Mang obliterated, leaving no corpse and not even a speck of dust behind, the 2 terrified Enforcement Hall disciples stumbled and crawled back to the main peak to report what happened on the solitary peak, instantly triggering a massive earthquake throughout the Azure Cloud sect. Inside the central Great Hall, with a loud bang and crack, the indestructible sect master's throne was smashed into powder by Zhao Wuji's palm. What did you say? Wang Mang was completely obliterated by a slap from Lu Chang'e? Zhao Wuji's eyes bulged like copper bells, his face twisted in extreme shock and fury as he glared deadly at the 2 trembling disciples kneeling below. It's absolutely true, Sect Master, the disciple cried out. That pressure. It was too terrifying. It was definitely Golden Core stage, maybe even peak Golden Core. The moment these words came out, all 12 perfected elders in the hall gasped deeply, every single face written with disbelief as if they had seen a ghost. Impossible! Absolutely impossible! The great elder stood up abruptly, his beard trembling, insisting that when Lu Chang'e joined the sect 10 years ago, he had personally tested my aptitude and confirmed I was a mortal with dead meridians, questioning how I could suddenly become a peak Golden Core cultivator after 10 years of zero progress. Could it be, the second elder's eyes flashed with deep dread, could it be that for these 10 years, he has been hiding his true cultivation and playing us all for fools? Enduring silently for a decade, and when he finally makes a move, it shakes the heavens. What terrifying calculation, what horrifying depth! Zhao Wuji's face was so dark it could drip water, because as the sect master of the Azure Cloud sect, he himself was barely at the peak Golden Core stage, and if Liu Chengge truly was at that level, his plan to forcibly seize the solitary peak's spirit vein wasn't just a pipe dream, but might bring a terrifying enemy down upon the sect. Sect Master, what do we do now? Wang Mang was your trusted aide, and he died at the solitary peak. Are we just going to let this go? An elder asked cautiously. Let it go? I am determined to get that supreme spirit vein of the solitary peak. Zhou Wuji violently clenched his fists, a sinister venomous light flashing in his eyes as he paced back and forth, his brain working rapidly. Fighting Liu Changge directly was inappropriate, but suddenly Zhao Wuji stopped pacing and hooked the corner of his mouth into a cruel sneer. Liu Changge, oh Liu Changge, you calculated everything. But you missed one point. Even if your cultivation reaches the heavens, your newly accepted disciple is an absolute piece of trash with a destroyed Dantian who just joined yesterday. The elders froze for a moment, and then their eyes lit up in unison. The great elder stepped forward, asking, Does the sect master mean we strike at that trash named Ye Chen? Exactly. Zhao Wuji's eyes turned sinister. Transmit my decree. Ring the heaven-shaking bell. The sect's life and death tournament, originally scheduled for 3 years from now, is moved forward to noon tomorrow. According to ironclad sect rules, peak masters and elders are strictly forbidden from fighting as substitutes in the life and death tournament. Violators will be deemed traitors and executed by the entire sect. Zhao Wuji laughed arrogantly, declaring that tomorrow on the arena, he would have his direct disciple, who was at the peak of Foundation establishment, openly and honorably slaughter that Ye Chen. Once his disciple is dead, the solitary peak's legacy will be broken again, and I want to see what face Liu Changge will have left to occupy that spirit vein. Brilliant, Sect Master. This move to cut the firewood from under the pot is absolutely perfect, the elders echoed in agreement. Dong, dong, dong. 3 melodious strikes of the ancient bell resonated across the entire Azure Cloud sect, and accompanied by the bell tolls, Sect Master Zhao Wuji's mighty voice, laced with spiritual energy, spread to every corner. Sect Master's decree, the sect tournament is moved forward to noon tomorrow. Disciples of all peaks must participate. Life and death will be decided by fate, and peak masters are absolutely forbidden from interfering. Instantly, the entire Azure Cloud sect boiled over, everyone realizing that moving the tournament to tomorrow was clearly an open conspiracy set up by the sect master targeting the solitary peak. They gossiped that since Liu Changge slapped Deacon Wang to death today, the sect master didn't dare to act against him directly and was using his powerless disciple as a scapegoat instead. They clicked their tongues in pity, saying Ye Chen was truly pathetic to be forced onto a life and death arena right after taking a master, doomed to be severely injured by the sect master's direct disciple, proving that when immortals fight, mortals suffer. Up on the solitary peak, hearing this news, Ye Chen jerked his head up, his fists clenching so hard they cracked. This is going too far! That old bastard sect master knows I just joined, yet he forces the tournament forward. He wants to corner me to snatch Master's peak. Ye Chen's eyes spat fire, but a deep sense of guilt rose within him. He felt he was too weak, and even though he awakened the ancient desolate sacred body, without any cultivation methods or martial skills, he only had brute strength and couldn't possibly defeat intersect elites who had trained for over a decade. He fell to his knees in front of me with a face full of shame, saying it was his fault for dragging down the solitary peak, vowing that tomorrow in the arena, even if it cost him his life, he wouldn't let the peak suffer. Ye Chen had prepared himself for a desperate struggle, resolving that since I gave him this life, he would bite off a piece of the enemy even if he died. However, I was still lying lazily on that rocking chair, fanning myself unhurriedly with a ragged fan, and upon hearing the decree in the sky, not only did I not panic, but a wildly joyous smile that was harder to suppress than a machine gun hooked on my lips. What a good guy. Zhao Wuji is truly a great guy, I thought, as I had just been worrying about lacking an excuse to keep exploiting the system after giving my disciple the marrow-cleansing pill, and now he had found the perfect excuse for me. So he can't win because he doesn't have a cultivation method? Perfect. Suppressing my laughter, I sat up, looked at Ye Chen, who looked ready to die for a cause, and shook my head as if disappointed in his lack of ambition. Risk your life, stupid? Even if my Liu Chengge's disciple was a dog, it could suppress a whole arrow when it goes out, I said, while extremely half-heartedly rummaging through my greasy storage bag. Soon I pulled out a tattered sword manual with yellowed pages and half the cover missing, clearly used to level a wobbly table leg, with the word BASIC faintly visible on it. It was a low-grade yellow-rank trash manual that even outer sect sweepers wouldn't bother to glance at. Ha! I tossed this garbage sword manual into Ye Chen's arms like throwing out trash. There's still one night until the tournament, I yawned and lay flat again. Take this and comprehend it. Tomorrow in the arena, if you can't chop your opponent in half with a single strike, don't bother coming back. Ye Chen held that oil-stained, torn yellow-rank sword manual, utterly dumbfounded, wondering if I was joking by asking him to use basic sword moves against a Peak Foundation establishment direct disciple. However, at the exact moment I tossed out the manual, the emotionless yet blood-boiling mechanical voice of the system exploded in my mind once again. Ding detected that the host successfully gifted the eldest disciple Ye Chen a book. Congratulations to the host for triggering an 8,000-fold critical return.
Ding, return successful.
Congratulations to the host for obtaining the ancient divine grade sword art, Great Desolation Heaven-Seeking Sword. Late at night, in the broken courtyard of Solitary Peak, while lying on the rocking chair, an earth-shattering roar exploded in my mind. In the next second, a terrifying sword intent that did not belong to this world poured directly into my soul. Deep within my sea of consciousness, the phantom of a supreme god demon appeared, stepping on the galaxy with its back to all living beings. With a casual wave, it instantly slashed a vast starfield 1,000,000 miles across into absolute nothingness. Great Desolation Heaven-Seeking. One sword to slay the heavenly Tao, one sword to seek all things. I couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air, realizing that an 8,000-fold critical hit actually yielded a divine-grade technique. If a sword art of this level appeared, let alone the Azure Cloud Sect, even the old monsters of the entire cultivation world would wage apocalyptic bloody wars to snatch it. The system directly empowered me, and I instantly comprehended this Great Desolation Heaven-Seeking Sword completely, as if I had practiced it for 10 million years. If I wanted to, right now, with just one finger, I could thoroughly wipe the entire Azure Cloud Sect off the map. I opened my eyes slightly and glanced at Ye Chen nearby, who was scratching his head in frustration over that basic sword manual. I realized this silly disciple's sacred body was newly formed and his soul was too weak, so directly transmitting a divine technique to him would probably scatter his soul instantly. I pondered for a moment, then formed my fingers into a sword, directly condensed a faint phantom containing 1/10,000th of the Great Desolation Heaven-Seeking Sword's intent, and flicked my finger. Swoosh! This imperceptible golden streak of light instantly vanished into Ye Chen's glabella. Ye Chen's body shook violently, his eyes snapping wide open as in that split second, he felt like he saw mountains of corpses and seas of blood, witnessing the collapse of heaven and earth, while an indescribable supreme sword intent was deeply branded into his soul. Disciple, sword moves are dead, but sword intent is alive? Close your eyes and properly comprehend what Master has left you. I turned over, yawned, and went back to sleep, murmuring, "Don't embarrass Solitary Peak tomorrow." Ye Chen fell to his knees with a loud thud, trembling all over, the shock in his eyes rising like a Category 12 tsunami. He realized that what Master gave him wasn't some torn yellow rank sword manual at all, but an indescribable supreme divine intent directly imprinted into his soul. Master's great grace. Ye Chen could not repay it even with 10,000 deaths, he thought as he tightly gripped a rusty iron sword next to him, closed his eyes directly, and like a statue bathed in moonlight, fell into a state of furious epiphany. The next day, at noon, the central martial arena of the Azure Cloud Sect was packed with a sea of people, the noise shaking the heavens. Tens of thousands of inner and outer sect disciples completely surrounded the massive white jade arena. While up on the high platform, Sect Master Zhao Wuji sat upright on the golden throne with the 12 elders lined up on both sides, everyone's face carrying an undisguised look of anticipating a good show. The time has come. Why hasn't anyone from Solitary Peak arrived yet? Someone muttered. Suddenly, a highly lazy and incredibly arrogant voice drifted over from behind the crowd. Didn't you see this Peak Master's carriage? Everyone snapped their heads around and instantly their jaws dropped to the floor. They saw me, still looking half asleep, lying comfortably on a bamboo rocking chair, and the one carrying this rocking chair was precisely the peerless trash Ye Chen who had just joined yesterday. Ye Chen was holding up the rocking chair with one hand, while in his other hand he carried a rust-spotted, unsharpened iron sword. With every step he took, the terrifying weight of his ancient, desolate, sacred body caused the hard bluestone ground to crack with a click-clack sound. Insolent! This life and death tournament is a solemn place.
Lu Chang'e, how dare you enter lying down?
What a disgrace. The great elder shouted angrily. I didn't even bother lifting my eyelids, comfortably shifting into a better position. Which rule of the tournament says I can't enter lying down? I retorted, cut the crap, I'm in a hurry to get back from my afternoon nap. Start already. Arrogant. Beside Zhao Wuji, a young man in an ornate brocade robe with a face full of pride coldly snorted. He leaped up and landed steadily on the white jade arena. And as he landed, the powerful spiritual fluctuations of a Peak Foundation establishment cultivator swept across the venue. Its eldest senior brother Lin Tianao. Eldest senior brother is mighty. Peak Foundation establishment, just half a step away from Golden Core. This is a complete mismatch. Eldest senior brother, don't hold back. Finish that useless trash off. Listening to the cheers around him, Lin Tianao tilted his chin up high, drew his radiant, high-grade black rank magical sword from his back, pointed it straight at Ye Chen, who had just carefully set me down off the stage, and sneered in contempt. Ye Chen, right? I heard you used to be a genius, but what a pity you're a failure now. Come on up. This young master is in a good mood today. I'll give you 3 moves. Use that piece of scrap iron in your hand and entertain me to your heart's content. Ye Chen remained expressionless, not even sparing Lin Tianao a glance. He simply turned, bowed deeply to me lying on the rocking chair, and said, Master, your disciple goes now. Then, carrying that rusty iron sword, Ye Chen walked step by step up onto the arena.
He had no flashy movement techniques and no spiritual energy fluctuations.
He looked just like a woodcutter going up to chop firewood. The entire crowd erupted into deafening laughter. Seeking death! Lin Tianao felt he was being looked down upon, his murderous intent surging. He decided not to grant the 3 moves anymore. He wanted to resolve this useless guy in the most brutal way possible on the very first strike. Take my ultimate move, Wild Wind Absolute Extinction Slash. Lin Tianao roared as his peak foundation establishment spiritual energy poured into his magical sword without reservation. In an instant, fierce winds howled on the arena, and hundreds upon thousands of materialized cyan wind blades merged into a terrifying 30-foot-long wind wolf that opened its maw and ruthlessly lunged toward Ye Chen. Too strong. This is the ultimate profound truth of a high-grade black rank weapon. Ye Chen is done for. Even an iron mountain would be shredded into powder by this strike. The elders on the platform stroked their beards and nodded, while Zhao Wuji revealed a smug smirk, believing the solitary peak would soon be his. However, facing this terrifying killing move, Ye Chen not only didn't dodge, he even closed his eyes. In his mind, the trace of faint yet God-suppressing divine intent I had pointed out to him last night resurfaced. Great desolation! Ye Chen slowly raised the rusty iron sword in his hand, and at the final 10th of a second before that terrifying windwolf devoured him, Ye Chen violently snapped his eyes open. His originally pitch-black eyes turned into a dazzling dark gold at this moment, and the vitality of the ancient desolate sacred body erupted like a volcano. He merged the trace of sword intent I had bestowed upon him with the terrifying strength of his sacred body, and without any flashy tricks, he slashed his sword directly forward. Seek heaven. Boom! There was no flashy light or complicated technique, only an unadorned yet utterly dark gold half-moon-shaped sword aura that detached from the blade of that rusty iron sword. The moment this sword aura appeared, the air in the entire martial arena was instantly sucked dry, and everyone felt a suffocating shadow grip their throats. Even the clouds in the sky were violently torn apart by this sword intent, leaving a vacuum zone tens of thousands of miles long. Sizzle. That 30-foot windwolf, which seemed capable of destroying heaven and earth, met the dark gold sword aura and was like tofu meeting a sharp blade. With a whoosh, it was instantly annihilated into nothingness. What? The smug smile on Lin Tianao's face instantly froze, his pupils rapidly contracting as they reflected that terrifying sword aura that was growing larger and larger, as if it could cleave the world in two. No, Master, save me! Lin Tianao screamed miserably, desperately activating his protective aura shield and even holding his black rank magical sword in front of his chest to block it. Clang! Crack! That black rank magical sword instantly shattered like brittle glass. Pfft. The dark gold sword aura passed through Lin Tianao's body without any hindrance. His body jerked violently, his aura turned chaotic, and he was sent flying hundreds of meters away like a broken sack, smashing heavily against the barrier. A terrifying, bone-deep wound appeared on his chest. His dantian was completely shattered, and even the meridians in his limbs were snapped inch by the aftershock of the sword strike. The Peak Foundation establishment prodigy had his foundations utterly destroyed by a single sword strike. Yet it wasn't over. After severely injuring Lin Tianao, the momentum of that dark gold sword aura didn't diminish in the slightest. It tore across the white jade arena, carving a massive trench several feet deep into the indestructible stage. The terrifying sword aura, stretching 300 meters long, carried a devastating, world-destroying power as it flew directly over the heads of tens of thousands of dumbfounded disciples. The sword aura ruthlessly slashed onto the towering, sharp peak located right behind the martial arena.
Rumble, rumble!
Under the utterly horrified and terrified gazes of tens of thousands of people in the arena, as well as all the elders on the high platform, that 1,000-foot-tall mountain peak was actually forcibly cleaved right down the middle by Ye Chen's sword strike, creating a terrifying bottomless abyss over a dozen meters wide. The mountain collapsed and dust filled the sky, making it look exactly like the descent of the apocalypse. Dead silence. A deathly silence washed over the entire area. In the massive martial arena, tens of thousands of people looked as if they had collectively been hit by a paralyzing spell. Not a single person dared to breathe, leaving only the sound of the wind sobbing as it blew past the crushed rocks. Everyone's eyeballs were practically popping out of their sockets, and their jaws had dropped to the floor. What did I just see? One sword cleaved a mountain in half? Someone thought in terror. He was clearly holding an unsharpened, rusty iron sword, and he didn't even use any spiritual energy. Is this still that same useless cripple? A monster? He's an absolute monster! Countless disciples were so frightened that their legs went completely soft, and they collapsed onto their behinds right on the ground. Up on the high platform, the 12 perfected elders all shot up from their seats abruptly as if they had seen a ghost. The great elder didn't even notice that he had accidentally yanked off his own beard. His whole body trembled like a sieve as he pointed at the youth standing with a sword on the arena, his lips quivering uncontrollably. Sword intent. This is a supreme sword intent that surpasses the earth rank and even the heaven rank. How is this possible? How could this be possible? And sitting on the head seat, a crisp crack sounded out as the top-grade spiritual jade wine cup in Secmaster Zhao Wuji's hand was crushed into fine powder by his sheer force. Liquid dripped down through his fingers, but he didn't seem to feel any pain at all. He didn't even bother looking at Lin Tianao, who was paralyzed on the ground like a defeated stray dog. Instead, his gaze, filled with a terrifying, almost sickly mixture of dread and greed, was deadlocked onto that broken iron sword in Ye Chen's hand. Then, he violently snapped his head toward me, who was lying down below on the rocking chair, casually picking my nose. Zhou Wuji's heart twitched madly, realizing that defeating a Peak Foundation establishment cultivator with one strike, projecting sword aura for 300 meters, and cleaving a mountain, this supreme divine art that even he couldn't comprehend, absolutely, positively could not have been produced by a mortal like Lu Chang'e, who supposedly couldn't even sense spiritual energy. He wondered just what kind of terrifying taboo entity was standing behind him. Ye Chen's mountain-cleaving strike stunned the entire audience, leaving the entire Azure Cloud Sect thoroughly shaken. After that battle, Sect Master Zhao Wuji didn't even dare to let out a fart. With a dark expression, he simply ordered people to carry the crippled Lin Tianao away, not even daring to mention the topic of seizing the Solitary Peak spirit vein again. Even those elders who had previously been eyeing the Solitary Peak like hungry tigers now kept their heads down and took detours whenever they passed by the mountain gate, terrified of angering me, and that humanoid Tyrannosaurus who could cleave a mountain with a single strike. However, as the instigator of all this, I was currently lying in my dilapidated courtyard feeling somewhat depressed. Sigh, this cheat is great and all, but the cooldown is way too long, I grumbled inwardly, looking helplessly at Ye Chen, who was frantically swinging his sword in the yard to consolidate his foundation. Yesterday, taking advantage of the fact that Ye Chen had just finished his fight, I casually scooped up a clump of mud from the ground, rolled it into a large restorative pill, and gifted it to him, attempting to exploit the system's loophole again. But the system had coldly responded. Ding, the host has gifted the same disciple an item of identical low quality, unable to trigger consecutive critical hits. A cooldown of 3 months is required, or the host must gift a higher grade item to trigger it. I rolled my eyes and complained, System, you're way too stingy. The most valuable thing I own right now is this broken rocking chair. Where am I supposed to find high-grade items to give him? Realizing that since I couldn't keep plucking the same sheep to death, I had no choice but to go out and find a new sheep. Ye Chen watched the house well. Master is going down the mountain for a bit to find you a junior martial sister, I said, rolling off the rocking chair and patting the dust off my butt. Master is going down the mountain personally? Ye Chen abruptly stopped his sword practice, looking extremely tense. Master, the world below the mountain is treacherous, and those vulgar mortals fail to recognize Mount Tai. What if they offend your holy presence? Your disciple is willing to follow you down the mountain to eliminate anyone who disrespects you. To him, I was a walking myth in the human world, and he couldn't fathom why I would go to such a dirty place. Get lost, I'm going to restock my goods. Why the hell are you tagging along? I kicked Ye Chen squarely in the butt, leaving behind an arrogant silhouette as I swaggered out of Solitary Peak with an utterly unbothered, strutting gait. 3 hours later, just outside the Azure Cloud Sect's sphere of influence, I arrived at the Black Abyss City, a lawless no-man's land. This was the most famous extrajudicial zone in the entire eastern wilderness, filled with strife, violence, and dirty transactions, with a pungent smell filling the air. Suppressing my peak golden core aura, I acted just like an ordinary wealthy young master, fanning myself with a broken folding fan as I strolled into the largest underground black market. Inside iron cages, various kinds of lives were imprisoned. Rogue cultivators whose cultivation had been crippled, half-demons with fox ears, and even mortal royal princesses sold off after their kingdoms were destroyed. But without exception, all of them had been tortured until the light in their eyes had completely vanished. No good, their aptitudes are all too poor. Not a single one meets the criteria for a destined trash. I shook my head repeatedly as I walked down the line. The system's requirements were very high. I couldn't just pick any random person with broken bones. They had to be a destined protagonist with an extremely tragic fate, but possessing massive karmic potential. Just as I was about to change locations to try my luck, I heard someone spit. Pah! How unlucky. Not only is this woman's dantian shattered, but she's also poisoned with the 9 nether bone-corroding poison that even a tier 3 alchemist can't cure. Her whole body is in a pathetic state, not a single patch of good skin left. Just drag her to the mass grave and feed her to the wild dogs. Keeping her on my hands is just a waste of food. Ahead in the slave camp, A slave driver with a face full of fierce flesh viciously kicked a fragile, tattered straw mat wrapped around a body toward a smelly ditch like a piece of garbage. I casually threw a glance over, and right at that moment, the system in my mind suddenly let out an unprecedentedly piercing alarm. Ding, high energy alert! High energy alert! 10 meters straight ahead detected a highly matching destined trash template. Target information, name, Su Qinghan. Hidden identity. Reincarnation of the number one empress of the 9 heavens and 10 earths from the upper realm. Body possesses the chaos ice divine bone, currently shattered. Current status, Dantian crushed by an enemy, afflicted with 9 nether poison, appearance ruined, life force severed. Karmic luck value, extremely low. Potential value for karmic bond, SS rank. Holy crap! I slammed on the brakes, my eyes instantly lighting up like 2,000-watt searchlights. The reincarnation of an empress? This was truly picking up a massive treasure. If I sheared this sheep, I'd probably strip the system completely bald. Without any hesitation, I dashed forward in a single stride and stomped my foot directly onto the hand of the guard, who was just about to drag Su Qinghan away to feed the dogs. I want this person, my voice was flat. The slave driver paused, looked me up and down, and then burst out laughing as if looking at an idiot. Young master, your tastes are quite heavy. This woman's face is ruined like that, and her body is exuding toxic gas. Are you buying her to use as fertilizer? Get lost, don't interfere with my business. Keeping someone with this kind of poison around is just bad luck. The guard was just about to draw his blade to chase me away. Whoosh. I didn't even use my spiritual energy, but merely released a microscopic trace of my golden core aura pressure. Thump! Thump! The guard and the slave driver were instantly struck as if by lightning, their legs giving out as they were directly forced to their knees, crawling on the ground so hard they cracked the bluestone bricks beneath them. They looked at me in absolute terror, feeling as if Mount Tai was pressing down on their backs. So, senior, spare our lives. This lowly one has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Take this person, please. Take her for free. No money needed. The slave driver was scared out of his wits, kowtowing frantically. I didn't bother paying attention to them. I casually tossed a low-grade spirit stone onto the slave driver's head, and then, without any disgust, bent down and hoisted the heavily comatose Su Qinghan, who smelled pungent and had no signs of life, right onto my shoulder. Fair trade, no cheating young or old, I whistled, carrying the severely comatose empress as I swaggered right out of the Black Abyss city. Back at Solitary Peak, when I tossed Su Qinghan onto the ground in the courtyard like a sack of potatoes, the impact caused the heavily wounded Su Qinghan to painfully, extremely slowly open a slit of her eyes. Thump. The soul-tearing pain that pierced deep into her bones, coupled with the highly corrosive poison cutting off her life force, made her, the once peerless empress who ruled the 9 heavens and 10 earths, so agonizingly pained she was on the verge of fainting. Where is this? I haven't lost my life force yet? A look of extreme arrogance and icy coldness flashed through Su Qinghan's one cautious, intact eye. She was originally the supreme ice empress of the upper realm, but she was betrayed by her most trusted kin, who allied with 4 great demon venerables to besiege her. Ultimately, she had no choice but to overdraw her soul, and a strand of her remnant soul plummeted into the lower realm, possessing the body of this equally miserable young girl. She originally intended to recultivate in this life and slaughter her way back to the upper realm, only to discover that this body not only had a completely shattered Dantian, but was also afflicted with a deadly poison that even her current soul power couldn't suppress. Hey, if you're awake, stop pretending, a lazy voice floated down from above her head. Su Qinghan struggled to move her eyeballs and saw me lying on a rocking chair drinking cheap tea while picking my toes. The moment she got a clear look at me, an extreme sense of contempt and disgust rose in her heart. A mortal? No, there is an extremely faint fluctuation of spiritual energy. At most, a chi condensation stage ant. Does a bottom feeder of the lower realm like this actually dare to look down at me from above? If I were in my past life, a weakling like this wouldn't even have the qualifications to kneel outside my palace and guard the door. With just a single glance, I could make this entire world vanish. Was it you? Who saved me? Su Qinghan's voice was as hoarse as sandpaper, carrying an icy tone that kept people 1,000 miles away. Nonsense. Other than this kind-hearted peak master, who else would pick you out of a garbage pile? I yawned, getting straight to the point. I see that your bone structure is amazing, even though it's completely shattered. You're a moldable talent. I'll give you a chance. Take me as your master. Take you as my master? Su Qinghan froze, and then let out an incredibly arrogant, mocking laugh in her heart. Absolutely ridiculous. Every single disciple I, the dignified 9 Heavens Empress, ever taught became an immortal king or great emperor, suppressing an entire region. You, a mere chi condensation ant from the lower realm, aren't even worthy of carrying my shoes, yet you delusionally want to be my master? If it weren't for my severe drop in strength right now, I really would slap you into nothingness. Dream on. Su Qinghan gritted her teeth, forcibly enduring the agony of the poison backlash as she struggled to spit out those 2 words. She would rather die from the poison than bow her head to a mortal ant, for this concerned the supreme dignity of an empress. Oh ho, quite the stubborn temper. I laughed, knowing that I loved this kind of hard bone the most because slapping their faces later felt the most satisfying. I didn't get angry at her refusal. I knew that the best way to deal with this arrogant tsundere empress, who was heavily poisoned and could drop dead at any moment, was simply to not take her seriously. I stood up from my rocking chair, walked over to a pile of weeds in the corner of the courtyard, and casually plucked a low-grade large-leaf herb that couldn't even be considered spirit grass. Just a common weed used by mortals to stop bleeding. Then, I walked back over to her, and like throwing a dirty rag, I casually tossed that mud-stained low-grade hemostatic weed right onto her bruised and dirty face. Wipe your face. This weed quenches thirst and stops bleeding. Eat it. From now on, you are the second disciple of my solitary peak. I announced the result in an extremely domineering, utterly unreasonable manner. Feeling the mud-stained mortal weed on her face, Su Qinghan felt an unprecedented massive humiliation. I, the Empress, need this kind of common weed? You actually dared to throw this ordinary garbage onto my noble face? Just as her aura turned chaotic from sheer anger, and she prepared to forcefully overdraw the very last trace of her divine soul to fight me to the death. That familiar, heavenly, mechanical roar exploded in my mind without any suspense. Ding! Detected that the host successfully gifted the second disciple Su Qinghan a herb. Congratulations to the host for triggering a 9,000-fold critical return. Ding! Return successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the divine grade immortal herb, 9-turn creation immortal herb. A phantom of a vibrant primordial secret realm appeared, featuring the 9-turn creation immortal herb, born at the very origin of the immortal Tao. Every single leaf contained the creation of a cycle of reincarnation. Consuming it could reconstruct the physical body and repair the divine soul, allowing even someone with only a wisp of remnant soul to return to their peak. 9-turn creation. A 9,000-fold critical hit truly lived up to its reputation. Although I was mentally prepared, I was still stunned by the tear of this immortal herb. In the original worldview, this kind of item had already surpassed the bounds of mortal and spiritual, making it a genuine immortal artifact. I glanced at the large broken iron pot in the yard used for boiling bathwater, and without any hesitation, I directly tossed this immortal herb, which was enough to trigger a war across the 3 realms, straight into the pot. Then, I casually drew a few buckets of mountain spring water, lit a fire, and started boiling it. If those ancient monsters from the upper realms saw this scene, they would probably go completely insane on the spot. Using the 9-turn creation immortal herb to boil bathwater? This was literally using the sun as a desk lamp, a reckless waste of heavenly treasures to the absolute extreme. Half an hour later, the water in the pot had turned into a thick, golden liquid resembling amber, emitting a refreshing and intoxicating fragrance. I stripped off my clothes and jumped right in. Phew, feels great. The boundless power of creation rushed madly into my limbs and bones through my pores. My cultivation, which had originally reached the peak of the golden core stage, became like a runaway wild horse in this moment, embarking once again on a terrifyingly despair-inducing surge. Breaking into the nascent soul stage. Breaking into the soul formation stage. Stepping into the void refinement realm. Success. In that instant, my aura seemed to merge with the entire solitary peak and even with the heaven and earth itself. My divine sense swept out, and the rustling of the wind and grass within a 10,000-mile radius fell perfectly under my gaze. Void Refinement Realm. In this lower realm, this was already an existence of legends, powerful enough to establish a major sect and be revered as an ancestor. With a casual wave of my hand, I shattered the trace impurities expelled from my body, and looking at the half pot of golden liquid still remaining, I thought for a moment and scooped out a large bowlful. Then, bare-chested, I walked over to Su Qinghan, who was on the verge of losing her life force. At this moment, her delicate body was trembling uncontrollably, the black energy on her face having already invaded her glabella. Her arrogant eyes were filled with despair, her soul fire so weak it could extinguish at any second. Am I truly going to perish in this desolate, barbaric land? Su Qinghan felt sorrowful. She was unwilling to accept this, as she still had her great revenge to exact and hadn't made those traitors pay the price yet. Right at that moment, a bowl of golden liquid, emitting a strange, warm aura, was brought to her lips. Here, drink it. This is a medicine master carefully concocted for you, I said, almost slipping up and saying it was my bathwater. Smelling the aura contained within that liquid, Su Qinghan's delicate body jerked violently, her originally dead eyes instantly shrinking to the size of pinpricks. As the former Nine Heavens Empress, how vast was her knowledge? This aura? Could this be the legendary immortal spirit Qi? No, this is even purer and higher grade than immortal spirit Qi. During her past life, while fighting on the Emperor's path, she once had the fortune of seeing a damaged immortal herb, and its aura wasn't even 1/10,000th as potent as this bowl of liquid. How is this possible? How could a lower realm inhabitant possess such a heaven-defying divine artifact? Wait, that pot he was boiling over the fire in the yard just now. Was all of that made from this stuff? Subinghan instinctively wanted to refuse. After all, she was an empress. How could she casually drink something handed to her by a strange man? But the temptation contained within that liquid caused her divine soul to involuntarily let out a greedy roar. Why are you dawdling? I lost my patience, directly grabbed Suchinghan by the chin, and domineeringly poured the entire bowl of immortal liquid down her throat. Gulp! The moment the liquid went down her throat, it felt as if 10,000 stars exploded simultaneously in Suchinghan's mind. Whoosh! The 9 nether poison, planted by the Almighty of the upper realm and clinging to her like a maggots in her bones, met this creation immortal liquid and acted like snow meeting the scorching sun. Without even a chance to struggle, it was instantly purified completely. Not only that, her dantian, which had been shattered into powder, actually began to madly reconstruct under the nourishment of the immortal liquid. A brand new dantian, entirely surrounded by 9 colored lightning, slowly rose within her body. Even her incomplete empress soul was perfectly mended in this moment. The scars on her face vanished at a speed visible to the naked eye, replaced by a peerless, breathtaking beauty capable of eclipsing heaven and earth. Her skin became like ice and snow, and faint chains of laws intertwined and wrapped around her body. How is this possible? Suginghan was completely stunned. She blankly felt the vast, sea-like vitality surging within her body, along with a foundation that was 100 times more solid than in her past life. With just one bowl of this medicinal liquid, not only did she survive, but she also obtained a heaven-defying supreme fortune she wouldn't even have dared to dream of in her past life. This is absolutely not immortal medicine. This is true immortal liquid, a taboo artifact that even immortal kings would bow their heads to fight over. Suginghan slowly raised her head and looked not far away, into the center of the dilapidated courtyard. I had unknowingly already gone back to lying on that rocking chair, crossing my legs and even letting out light snores, looking exactly like an utterly authentic, lazy country youth. But at this moment, in her eyes, that figure became infinitely tall and profoundly deep, as if he wasn't a person at all, but a supreme. The eternal sovereign sitting at the end of time, looking down upon all living beings, casually bestowing immortal artifacts, completely unbothered by the act of boiling immortal herbs for a bath. Could it be that he wasn't someone from the lower realm at all, but an ancient giant of the immortal Tao, playing games in the mortal world? Suginghan recalled her so-called empress dignity from just moments ago, feeling her face burning with pain. In front of such an existence, what did her tiny identity as an empress even count for? Serving him tea and pouring water would probably be an honor earned over 3 lifetimes. Could it be Master is a hidden giant of the immortal Tao? Suzinghan no longer had a shred of arrogance. She pursed her lips, her eyes full of awe and fanaticism, and with a loud thud, she willingly fell to her knees toward me, who was snoring on the rocking chair. Unfilial disciple Suchingen kowtows to thank Master for the grace of saving my life, the grace of recreation. This bow was made with complete sincerity and submission. On Solitary Peak there was peace. Suginghan knelt on the ground, unwilling to get up for a long time as she frantically stabilized the terrifying power of creation within her body, while Ye Chen stood to the side, curiously observing this suddenly magnificent second junior sister. However, this peace did not last long. Whoosh! Without any warning, the originally clear, cloudless sky abruptly turned pitch black as ink, and rolling demonic clouds pressed down from above. Within those demonic clouds, countless miserable, resentful souls roared, and a sinister demonic aura instantly enveloped the entire Azure Cloud sect. Lu Chengge, get the hell out here. A voice full of hostility and killing intent exploded between heaven and earth like rolling thunder. At the Azure Cloud sect's main peak, the panicking disciples all looked up and saw 3 mysterious figures in black cloaks adorned with blood-red eyeballs, standing midair, radiating a terrifying pressure that brought utter despair. This is Almighty Soul Formation Realm Cultivators. The Great Elder felt the pressure suppressing his body, making him unable to move, and he was so frightened his soul almost scattered as he collapsed directly to the ground. Soul Formation Realm. Within a 10,000-mile radius, the Soul Formation stage was true divinity. With a single thought, they could wipe out an entire nation. I wonder what brings your excellencies to the Azure Cloud sect. Sect Master Zhao Wuji, trembling with fear, flew up into the air, bowing his waist like a shrimp as he greeted them with a face full of sycophantic smiles. The leading demonic sect assassin coldly snorted, producing a portrait in his hand. The person drawn on it was exactly Su Qinghan. I am an enforcer of the Upper Realm's nether demonic sect, ordered to track down this woman. She's afflicted with the 9 nether poison and is hiding here. If you know what's good for you, hand this woman over immediately. Otherwise, today, I will make sure not even a chicken or dog is left alive in your Azure Cloud sect. Zhao Wuji shivered violently. When he saw the figure on the portrait, was precisely the woman I brought back yesterday. An extremely venomous glint flashed in his eyes. The upper realm demonic sect, almighty soul formation realm cultivators, this was a massive backer. He had just been worrying about having no chance to eliminate me. His biggest headache, and now I had actually caused trouble myself. Drawing in a terrifying faction from the upper realm, this was simply a godsend. Please quell your anger, my lord. Zhao Wuji immediately pointed toward the solitary peak with a sycophantic look on his face. That demoness is right there, hidden by a traitor of our sect named Lu Changge. I was just planning to clean up the sect. Since my lord wants her, this lowly one is willing to serve like a dog or horse. Zhao Wuji turned around, his expression instantly turning incredibly sinister, channeling his spiritual energy to shout, "All elders, hear my command! Activate the Sect Guardian Grand Formation, the Spirit-Locking Array. Completely seal off Solitary Peak. Don't let a single fly escape. Lu Changge has colluded with a demonic demoness and harbors malicious intent. Today I shall enact justice on behalf of heaven." Boom. The Azure Cloud Sect's Guardian Array roared to life, a massive, semi-transparent barrier firmly encircling the Solitary Peak. Shawuji led a group of elders looking like a pack of foxes trailing behind tigers and wolves, aggressively charging towards Solitary Peak. In the courtyard of Solitary Peak. "Master! People are attacking!" Yachen abruptly drew the broken iron sword from his back, his sacred body eager and ready to strike. After all, his cultivation had just begun. Facing soul formation assassins, he still felt pressure as heavy as a mountain. "Lu Changge, come out and accept your death." Zhao Wuji's voice echoed in the air. Immediately after, the three black demonic figures instantly tore through the sky and smashed heavily into the courtyard. Bang! 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 The powerful shockwave shattered the courtyard walls inch by inch. "Demoness! You really are here." The leading demonic assassin swept a greedy gaze over Su Qinghan, then revealed a cruel smile. "Although I don't know what method you used to remove the poison gas, today, your life belongs to me." Chao Wuji stood to the side, sneering and flattering. "My lord, that guy lying on the chair is Lu Changge. He actually dared to defy your will. He truly deserves 10,000 deaths." Ye Qin and Su Qinghan exchanged a glance, and without any hesitation, the two of them moved in unison, standing firmly in front of the rocking chair that was still gently swaying. "If you want to touch my master, you'll have to step over my dead body first." Ye Chen roared furiously, his ancient, desolate, sacred body's blood chi soaring like a long dragon. "Mere demonic dogs! How dare you act so insolently here?" Su Qinghan's body radiated cold air in all directions, the oppressive aura of an empress faintly emerging in her eyes. "Ha ha ha ha! One with foundation establishment strength and a little girl who has barely recovered. What a joke!" The leading demonic assassin laughed wildly, his eyes full of contempt. "Since you want to be dealt with, I'll send you on your way first, and then take my time torturing that peak master." Soul Formation Dharma Idol? Netherworld Ghost Hand? Rumble! The sky cracked open to reveal a massive black hole, and a terrifying ghost hand measuring 100 zhang across. Wreathed in endless black demonic fire and carrying a pressure that could crush space, reached out from the clouds. The ground beneath their feet was collapsing. "It's over! You're all done for!" Zhao Wuji screamed frantically with a face full of madness. The demonic assassin sneered as his soul formation Dharma idol's massive hand grabbed toward the mountain peak. "No one can save you." Right as that pitch-black, terrifying giant hand was about to touch the thatched roof, the originally still rocking chair let out a crisp creak. The one who had been napping the whole time slowly opened his eyes. What kind of eyes were those? Profound as if containing ancient galaxies, yet calm as an utterly dead abyss. I looked at that sky-obscuring black hand, my eyes completely devoid of ripples, carrying only a faint, subtle annoyance at having my afternoon nap disturbed. "Have you had enough fun?" I spoke flatly, then extended a single index finger toward the sky, gently drawing a line. My voice, carrying 3 parts laziness and 7 parts impatience, echoed leisurely between heaven and earth. Immediately after, I extended a long, pale index finger and casually swiped it downward toward that 100 zhang wide, mountain-crushing black ghost hand in the sky. It was completely careless, like wiping away a speck of dust. There were no earth-shattering spiritual energy fluctuations, nor any dazzlingly brilliant divine light. But right at the instant my fingertips slid across the air, a crisp crack sounding exactly like glass shattering abruptly exploded in the depths of everyone's soul. Under the utterly terrified and horrified gazes of the 3 soul formation assassins, Zhao Wuji, and tens of thousands of sect disciples, that sky-obscuring soul formation Dharma idol, wreathed in endless netherworld demonic fire, was actually cleaved cleanly down the middle, as if by an invisible heaven-opening divine blade. Then, with a loud bang, it turned into a sky full of dancing black specks of light, completely annihilated in this world like a fragile soap bubble. "What?" The cruel sneer on the face of the leading demonic sect assassin instantly froze, his pupils contracting to their absolute limit. With his Dharma idol broken, a terrifying backlash force rushed into his body like an inverted tsunami. Pfft. His body jerked violently, his aura turned chaotic, and he tumbled through the air like a kite with a snapped string, nearly plummeting headfirst to the ground. "What did you do?" How could my soul formation Dharma idol be destroyed by a single finger? The assassin leader screamed, his voice filled with undisguised terror and trembling. That was a soul formation realm Dharma idol. Even an almighty at the late stage of the soul formation realm couldn't have wiped it out so effortlessly. He wondered what kind of demonic sorcery this guy lying on the rocking chair had used. Noisy? I slowly stood up from my rocking chair. I lazily stretched my waist, my bones letting out a series of crackling sounds like popping roasted beans. And accompanying my stretch, boom, an indescribable, terrifying pressure that completely surpassed the limit of this world's laws erupted unreservedly from my body, like a primordial god awakening from a slumber of billions of eras. Void refinement realm. This pressure was so terrifying it had completely materialized. Centered on Solitary Peak, the sky within a radius of 100,000 miles instantly turned a brilliant dark gold. The heavenly Tao laws trembled before this power, and the sky full of demonic clouds like snow meeting the scorching sun couldn't even last half a second before being ripped into nothingness by the violent shockwave. Boom, boom, boom! The Azure Cloud Sect's Guardian Grand Formation, the Spirit Locking Array, which claimed to be able to block attacks from peak soul formation cultivators, was like wet paper in front of this pressure. It instantly became covered in countless spiderweb-like cracks and violently shattered. Thud, thud, thud! The moment the pressure descended, all 72 peaks of the Azure Cloud Sect, tens of thousands of outer and inner sect disciples, and even those usually high and mighty elders, felt their legs turn to jelly as they heavily collapsed to their knees on the ground in unison. Their bones whined and their souls trembled, as if 100,000 primordial divine mountains were pressing down on their backs, making even lifting a single finger an impossible luxury. And right above the courtyard of Solitary Peak, at the very core of this pressure, the three unbearably arrogant netherworld demonic sect assassins didn't even have time to let out a complete scream before they were ruthlessly swatted out of midair and smashed into the ground by this dimension-lowering void refinement realm pressure rumble. The hard bluestone ground was smashed into 3 giant craters, each several zheng deep. The 3 soul formation realm assassins currently looked like 3 flies swatted against a wall. Every inch of their bones was shattered, their auras chaotic, and their states absolutely miserable. V Void Refinement Realm? The assassin leader lay paralyzed at the bottom of the crater, his eyeballs covered in bloodshot veins from extreme terror, the corners of his eyes torn, and his face a bloody mess. His mind went completely blank, leaving only endless despair. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The laws of the lower realm are incomplete. They can only accommodate the peak of the soul formation realm at most. How could you break the plane's limit and reach the void refinement realm? Who exactly are you? You absolutely cannot be a mortal of the lower realm. He broke down completely. The netherworld demonic sect ran rampant in the lower realm because they had soul formation almighties guarding them, but facing a supreme giant of the void refinement realm, forget about the 3 of them. Even if they brought out the entire foundation of the netherworld demonic sect, it wouldn't be enough for the opponent to crush with one finger. Standing to the side, Sujinghan's delicate body was also trembling violently. Even though she was the 9 Heavens Empress in her past life, and even though she had already guessed my depths were unfathomable, when I truly revealed this void refinement realm pressure, her worldview was still mercilessly shattered, words becoming law, pressure taking physical form. This level of control over the laws would make me an absolute overlord-level existence even in the upper realm. The look in Suchinghan's eyes toward me shifted completely from awe to that of a fanatic believer. But right now, the most desperate person in the entire area was undoubtedly Sect Master Zhao Wuji. Thump! Zhao Wuji knelt stiffly right at my feet, his clothes entirely soaked through with cold sweat. He felt his courage completely shatter, his mouth filled with the taste of extreme bitterness. Recalling his face full of kicking someone when they were down and bullying with numbers just moments ago, Zhao Wuji wished he could slap himself tens of thousands of times. He had actually brought people and activated the sect's guardian array to deal with a void refinement realm ancestor. This was no different than repeatedly jumping back and forth on the edge of a cliff. Papik, Master Lu. No, Ancestor Lu. Grandpa Lu. Zhao Wuji frantically smashed his head against the crushed rocks, bleeding profusely until his scalp was torn open. I was forced. It was those 3 evil men from the demonic sect who forced us. I am absolutely loyal to the sect, and my admiration for you flows like an endless river. I beg you, treat me like a nameless nobody and let me go. Forced? I looked down at him from above, a completely cold, emotionless smirk hooking the corner of my mouth. Leading people to seal off my solitary peak? You call that being forced? Right then, a flash of golden light descended from my finger. A physical body of a soul formation almighty, along with their indestructible nascent soul, was instantly burned to ashes like paper money in a raging fire under that golden light, scattering in the wind with their souls extinguished, entirely erasing even their right to reincarnation. Dead silence. All the Azure Cloud Sect elders who saw this scene were so frightened they lost control of their bodies, their teeth chattering madly, casually obliterating 3 soul formation almighties, Was this guy still human? Seeing this scene, Zhao Wuji was scared completely out of his wits, his crotch instantly soaking wet. He knew begging for mercy was useless, so he decided to forcefully activate a secret technique in an attempt to flee. Since you love being a running dog for the upper realm's evil dog so much, my flat voice echoed in Zhao Wuji's ear like the death god's verdict, then go down below and be a proper dog. Before my words even finished echoing, I casually raised my right hand and slapped down across space. Boom! A giant golden palm condensed purely from spiritual energy and carrying world-destroying power crashed down heavily. No! Zhao Wuji let out a miserable scream filled with absolute despair. Bang! A muffled explosion echoed throughout the entire sect. The peak golden core sect, master of the Azure Cloud sect, Zhao Wuji, didn't even have a single sliver of room to resist. His entire person was forcibly slammed dozens of meters deep into the ground by this slap. In his place, only a massive palm print remained, and at the center of that palm print, a smear of residue whose original form couldn't even be recognized. Decisive to kill, ruthlessly peerless, a deathly silence blanketed the area, leaving only the howling of the cold wind. A generation sect master had perished just like that, crushed as casually as stepping on a bug. I casually dusted off my hands, as if I had merely done something insignificant. Then, ignoring the trembling sect elders kneeling outside, I slowly raised my head, my profound eyes seeming to pierce through the endless void, locking directly onto the thick layers of clouds in the nine heavens. A cold arc hooked the corner of my mouth. You've been watching for a long time now. Friend from the sacred land, aren't you going to come out? Rumble. As my words fell, the sky above the nine heavens, which had just calmed down, suddenly began to churn violently. The clouds were forcibly cleaved open as if by an ancient giant axe, and a blindingly brilliant golden divine light cascaded down from the rift in the sky. Accompanied by the descent of the divine light were deafening chants of immortal music and phantoms of intertwining dragons and phoenixes circling the sky. At the end of that divine light path, a luxurious jade carriage pulled by 9 pure-blooded, golden-eyed jade lions slowly drove out of the void. Standing on the jade carriage was a majestic middle-aged man wearing the white robe with golden trimmings of the nine heavens sacred land. He held a golden imperial decree, radiating boundless divine might in his hands, standing high and mighty like an immortal god inspecting the mortal realm. The space around him slightly distorted due to his presence. Although his aura wasn't as utterly abnormal as mine, it absolutely carried the terrifying pressure of the peak soul formation realm sweeping down overwhelmingly. The envoy of the nine heavens sacred land, he had been hiding above the clouds this whole time, personally witnessing me eliminate the demonic sect assassins and Zhao Wuji. Although he also felt his heart palpitate at the terrifying aura I had just erupted with, he was someone from the nine heavens sacred land. What he held in his hands was a personal decree from the current #1 prodigy of the eastern wilderness, the nine heavens divine son, Chu Tianjiao. In this eastern wilderness, the nine heavens sacred land was the absolute ruler. Even if I was a hidden old monster, upon seeing the sacred land's decree, I had to obediently kneel down and receive it. Lu Chang'e. The Sacred Land's envoy looked down at the solitary peak, his voice infused with spiritual energy echoing like rolling thunder across the entire Azure Cloud sect, his tone carrying unquestionable arrogance. As a peak master of an orthodox sect, you actually dared to publicly launch a heavy attack against your own sect master. This is a heinous crime. I have come by the order of His Highness, Divine Son Chu Tianzhou, bearing the Divine Son's decree. Hearing the 3 words Chu Tianjiao Ye Chen standing behind me, instantly had his eyes turn completely red. Boom! The ancient desolate sacred body within him uncontrollably erupted with violent blood qi, his fingernails piercing deep into his palms as drops of blood fell to the ground with a tick-tock sound. Chu Tianjiao! That hypocritical hypocrite. It was him who dug out his supreme lightning spirit root, crippled his cultivation, and kicked him out of the sacred land like a stray dog. This hatred and grudge could not be washed away even if all the water in the oceans were used. The Sacred Land's envoy didn't care at all about Ye Chen's man-eating gaze. He aggressively unrolled the glowing golden decree in his hands and read it aloud loudly as if pronouncing my fate. The Divine Son's decree descends. Considering that your cultivation was not easy to attain, if you are willing to realize your errors and return to the right path, you can be spared from death. First, immediately hand over the Sacred Land's traitor and sinner, Ye Chen, so that I may bring him back to the Sacred Land's heavenly prison to suffer for 10,000 years. Second, you, Lu Chang'e, must publicly cripple your own cultivation and follow me to kneel outside the gates of the nine heavens sacred land for 10 years to atone for your sins. The decree has been read. Lu Chang'e, why aren't you kneeling to receive the decree and kowtowing to thank the Divine Son for his heavenly grace? The envoy's voice echoed between heaven and earth, carrying a suffocating oppression. Dead silence. All the surviving Azure Cloud sect elders and disciples closed their eyes in despair. They had just gotten rid of the Netherworld demonic sect. only to attract the even more terrifying Nine Heavens Sacred Land. Offending the Nine. Heaven's Sacred Land was equivalent to offending the King of Hell. Whether in heaven or on earth, there was no path to survival. However, standing in the middle of the courtyard, I suddenly sighed. Looking at him like he was an absolute idiot, I spoke lazily. Do you know you're too noisy? I didn't even bother letting him finish speaking. I simply raised my right hand and made a grabbing motion toward the envoy in midair. Whoosh! The spiritual energy between heaven and earth instantly went berserk. That peak soul formation sacred land envoy didn't even have time to react before he felt an irresistible, terrifying suction directly lock onto every inch of space around him. In the face of this power, his proud cultivation was as laughable as a baby facing a giant dragon. Swoosh! That golden divine sun's decree, radiating endless divine might, flew directly out of the envoy's hand, turning into a streak of light that landed steadily in my palm. You dare snatch the divine sun's decree? You are declaring war against the entire Nine Heavens sacred land. The envoy roared in a mix of terror and fury, desperately trying to break free from the spatial binding, only to find that he couldn't even move a single finger. I completely ignored his frantic barking. I looked down at the decree in my hand, woven from thousand-year golden silk spiritual silk, and emitting a faint fragrance. Under everyone's horrified, stupefied, and even crazed gazes, I slowly raised my right foot. Because I had just stepped on the floor crushed by Jawuji's death, the sole of my shoe was covered in a large patch of mud. Then, incredibly naturally, I laid that decree, which represented the absolute authority of the Nine Heavens sacred land and the supreme will of the divine sun, flat on the ground. Next, I stomped my mud-covered shoe sole right onto the decree and rubbed it back and forth vigorously. Screech, rip! The golden silk spiritual silk let out agonizing sounds of friction. That originally sacred and inviolable divine sun's decree was instantly smeared beyond recognition by the mud, and was even forcibly rubbed out with a few large holes by my shoe. Although the material of this paper is a bit stiff, it barely passes as something to wipe the mud off my shoes, I commented casually, looking with satisfaction at my freshly cleaned shoe sole. Silence, absolute, deathly silence. It was as if the entire world had pressed the pause button in this moment. Su Jing'en was dumbfounded. Yechen was stupefied. The tens of thousands of Azure Cloud Sect disciples kneeling outside felt their souls were about to leave their bodies. Using the Nine Heavens' divine sun's decree to wipe mud off a shoe? This was madness. This was piercing a hole in the heavens. This was tearing the face off the Nine Heavens sacred land, throwing it on the ground and madly stomping on it. Ah, Luchange, you lunatic! You dare desecrate the divine sun's decree. You're dead! The Nine Heavens sacred land will definitely dispatch an Extreme Tao Emperor weapon to make you pay the price, banishing your soul to the Nine Nethers, never to reincarnate for eternity. The sacred land's envoy in midair went completely mad, his eyes blood red as he roared hysterically. Make me pay the price? A bone-chilling glint finally flashed in the depths of my eyes. I abruptly snapped my head up, and my figure instantly left behind an afterimage where I stood. Whoosh, even space was torn apart by the sonic boom. My figure completely ignored the laws of space, instantly appearing right in front of the sacred land envoy. In the envoy's violently contracted pupils, my whip kick, carrying the terrifying power to kick a star into pieces, ruthlessly slammed into half of his body. Bang! Bap! A blood-curdling explosion echoed through the clouds. That peak soul formation sacred land envoy didn't even have time to trigger his protective magical artifacts before the entire right half of his body, shoulder, arm, thigh, and all was instantly blasted into a spray of energy ripples by this single kick. A sky full of gore mixed with shredded clothing poured down like a torrential rainstorm. Ah, my body. The envoy's remaining half-body convulsed madly in the air, letting out a miserable wail that didn't sound human. The extreme agony almost made him pass out on the spot. I didn't kill him directly. I grabbed the remaining half of his neck, my eyes as cold as a death god looking down at an ant. The reason I didn't end you is because I need a dog to go back and deliver a message. Roll back to the Nine Heavens sacred land and tell that whatever his name is Chu Tianjiao to wash his neck and wait for me in the sacred land. Saying that, I kicked the wailing envoy into that jade carriage like kicking away trash. The jade carriage turned into a panicked streak of light, scrambling to flee toward the horizon with the speed of wind and thunder, disappearing into the clouds in the blink of an eye. Between heaven and earth, deathly silence returned once more. I slowly floated down from midair and landed back in the courtyard. I didn't even look at the torn, trampled decree on the ground. I turned my head and looked at Ye Chen, whose eyes were blood red, his body trembling violently from excitement and hatred. I reached back into my storage space and pulled out a jade slip radiating an ancient, primordial aura, the other top-tier divine artifact the system had refunded last time, and tossed it carelessly into Ye Chen's arms. Under Ye Chen's blank stare, I went back to lying on the rocking chair, grabbed the palm leaf fan, and fanned myself. My tone was flat, yet it carried an extreme dominance that felt like mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Master gives you 1 month. Take this. Go to the Nine Heavens sacred land and bring me back that divine sun's life. In the main hall of the Azure Cloud Sect's main peak, a strong smell of blood still lingered in the air. It had been less than an incense stick's time since the former sect master Zhao Wuji had been slapped into nothingness. Inside the hall, the remaining 11 perfected elders were currently kneeling obediently below, like 11 plucked quails, their foreheads pressed tightly against the cold jade floor, trembling like sieves and not even daring to breathe loudly. And sitting completely unbothered on the sect master's throne, which symbolized the highest authority of the Azure Cloud Sect, was me. I was casually tossing around a spatial ring emitting a rustic glow. It was the key to the sect's treasure vault, inherited for thousands of years. Just moments ago, to save his life, the great elder had unhesitatingly handed over the entire sect's foundation with both hands. This pile of scrap metal is worthy of being called a treasure vault? My divine sense swept into the ring, and I curled my lips in disgust. The so-called black rank magical artifacts and tier 3 pills piled inside looked no different than pebbles on the side of the road to me. However, even ordinary items have their uses. A maniacal arc hooked the corner of my mouth. I turned my head to look at Ye Chen and Su Qing'an, who were standing to the side, still deeply immersed in extreme shock and unable to snap out of it. "Disciples, come here," I called out. Ye Chen and Su Qing'an shuddered and hurriedly stepped forward respectfully. In their eyes, I had completely transcended the realm of a human. I was a living ancestor who could poke a hole in the sky at any given moment. Master said I would take you to flatten the Nine Heavens sacred land in a month, but your current cultivation is still too painful to look at, I said, directly plunging my hand into the treasure vault ring. In the next second, as if tossing cabbages, I grabbed handfuls of colorful pills and magical artifacts, and without even looking, madly smashed them into my 2 disciples' arms. Take this! Take this broken sword and use it to chop vegetables. Take these chi recovery pills and eat them like jelly beans. And this pile of broken talismans, use them as scrap paper. Clatter, clatter, clatter! Countless Sect Foundation items buried Ye Chen and Su Qing'an completely like a mountain of garbage. Seeing this scene, the great elder kneeling on the ground felt his heart bleed, his eyeballs almost popping out. That is the sect's guardian treasure, the Azure Cloud Sword. And he's using it to chop vegetables? And those are tier 4 Great Restoration pills capable of bringing the dying back to life. And he's telling them to eat it like jelly beans? The old man's throat twitched, almost choking on his own breath, but he desperately covered his mouth, forcibly suppressing his gasps. He didn't dare make a sound, terrified of angering me. However, I didn't care about these ordinary items at all, because right at this moment, an unprecedented system carnival was taking place in my mind. Ding! Detected that the host gifted eldest disciple Ye Chen an item, triggering an 8,000-fold critical hit. Congratulations on obtaining the Extreme Dao Emperor weapon, Immortal Slaying God Executing Sword. Ding! Detected that the host gifted second disciple Su Qing'an an item, triggering a 9,000-fold critical hit. Congratulations on obtaining the 9-turn immortal medicine Taiyi Grand Creation Pill. Ding! Detected that the host gifted eldest disciple Ye Chen an item, triggering a 10,000-fold critical hit. Congratulations on obtaining the Chaos Artifact 36-petaled Creation Green Lotus. This was madness. The system notifications were like a jammed Gatling gun, madly spamming my mind. 10,000-fold, 8,000-fold, 5,000-fold. The entire system space was instantly completely stuffed with countless divine artifacts, immortal pills, and emperor weapons radiating world-destroying auras. These supreme treasures, any single one of which could make upper realm immortal kings fight to the death and trigger cosmic wars, were currently piled up in my warehouse like cabbages. Awesome. So this is the thrill of mass-producing an army? I laughed up at the sky, my laughter shaking the entire Great Hall violently. System. Extract all the immortal pills and divine artifacts that can increase cultivation and empower me directly. Whoosh! The moment my words fell, a terrifying energy that could not be described with words. Energy so vast that even the heavenly Tao of this world couldn't comprehend it. Poured unreservedly into my body like billions of primordial dragons. My cultivation completely lost control at this moment. The bottleneck that had already reached the peak of the void refinement realm was like wet paper in front of this power, instantly shredded to powder. Breaking out of void refinement realm, breaking into the body integration stage, stepping into the great vehicle stage. In less than 10 breaths of time, my aura had climbed to an absolute peak that made the entire eastern wilderness continent tremble madly. The sky instantly turned a dark purple, and the spiritual energy within a radius of 1,000,000 miles was instantly sucked dry. Above the 9 heavens, a world-destroying heavenly tribulation stretching for 100,000 miles was frantically gathering. That was the obliteration tribulation instinctively sent down by the heavenly Tao upon sensing a terrifying existence that surpassed the plane's limits. Heavens, what is that? 100,000-mile heavenly tribulation? Is someone about to ascend and become an immortal? All the old monsters across the eastern wilderness were awakened by this aura, coming out of their secluded cultivation spots one by one, looking toward the Azure Cloud Sect with horrified gazes, scared completely out of their wits. Heavenly tribulation? I slowly raised my head, and from those profound eyes, two dazzling beams of golden light shot out, piercing through eternity. I am ascending my cultivation here, and you dare to come join the fun? Scram! My voice exploded like spring thunder as I directly shouted at that 100,000-mile-long, world-destroying heavenly tribulation. My words became law, the great sound silencing all others' rumble. Under the utterly shocked and horrified gazes of everyone, that 100,000-mile heavenly tribulation, which represented the highest will of the heavenly Tao, actually acted like a pug that had its butt kicked. It abruptly shattered and dissipated in midair, not even daring to strike down a single bolt of lightning, vanishing into nothingness just like that. Retreating the heavenly tribulation with a single word. Transcending tribulation realm. Success. Down below, seeing this scene, Su Qinghan plopped down onto her behind, her breathtakingly beautiful face written all over with blankness and madness. He shattered the ascension heavenly tribulation with a single roar. Is he still human? As the former Nine Heavens Empress, her worldview was madly rubbed against the ground by me at this moment. The realm she had painstakingly cultivated for thousands of years to reach in her past life. I broke through in the time it takes to drink a sip of water, and I was thousands of times stronger than she was in her past life. What are you staring blankly for? Eat, train. I casually and roughly stuffed the refunded Tai Grand Creation pill and Nine Heavens Immortal Spirit liquid directly into my two disciples' mouths. If you don't reach the soul formation realm in 1 month, I'll break your legs. Under the piling up of these supreme divine artifacts that would make even immortals red-eyed with envy, Solitary Peak completely transformed into the most terrifying spiritual energy vortex center in the entire eastern wilderness. Time flew by and 1 month passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, above the Solitary Peak, two terrifying pillars of light suddenly erupted, shooting straight into the clouds, bringing thousands of auspicious streaks of light and phantoms of dragons and phoenixes. Two absolute peak soul formation realm auras swept across the 8 desolates like a storm, Yechen. The ancient desolate sacred body had reached major completion, attaining the early soul formation realm, his blood qi like smoke, his physical body capable of forcibly resisting magical treasures. Suginghan, her chaos. Ice divine bone was reconstructed, attaining the mid-soul formation realm, her empress soul completely awakened, capable of freezing 1,000 miles with a single thought. Two 18-year-old soul formation realm cultivators. If this news spread, the entire cultivation world would go completely insane. Bang! The dilapidated mountain gate of Solitary Peak was ruthlessly kicked open. I, wearing a spotless white robe, stretched lazily. There wasn't a single trace of spiritual energy fluctuation on my body. I looked just like a mortal wealthy young master with absolutely no cultivation. But standing behind me, Ye Chen and Su Qinghan were like two primordial, ferocious beasts ready to devour someone at any moment. The look in their eyes toward me contained nothing but extreme awe and absolute fanaticism. A lazy yet icy smile hooked the corner of my mouth. Come, follow Master to go smash the Sacred Land's venue. Today, the Nine Heavens Sacred Land was decorated with lanterns and colorful banners, with 10,000 factions coming to pay their respects. The entire Sacred Land hovered above the Nine Heavens, with countless immortal birds and exotic beasts flying through the sea of clouds. Golden spiritual energy waterfalls cascaded down from the horizon, transforming into a sky full of golden rain. All of this was because today was the peerless grand wedding of the Nine Heavens Sacred Land's divine son, Chu Tianzhao, taking the #1 beauty of the great Chu dynasty, Liu Ruyan, as his wife. The ceremony was set up in the Heavenly Palace Square, the absolute core of the Sacred Land. At this moment, the square was already filled to the brim with top-tier giants from all over the eastern wilderness. There were ancient families with inheritances spanning 10,000 years, great emperors of dynasties that ruled over billions of miles of territory, and even a few Void Refinement Realm ancestors who normally hid themselves like divine dragons. His Highness the Divine Son is truly a heaven-sent genius. To break through to the early soul formation realm at merely 20 years old, he will definitely ascend in broad daylight in the future. Indeed, I heard His Highness even awakened a supreme heavenly lightning spirit root a few days ago. This is an unprecedented supreme aptitude rarely seen in a million years. Numerous big shots toasted each other, sparing no words of praise, and right in the center of the grand hall, Divine Son Chu Tianjiao, wearing a purple-gold python robe, stood with his hands behind his back. Violent purple lightning faintly roamed around his body, exuding a suffocating soul formation realm pressure. Listening to the flattery around him, a hint of arrogant smugness flashed deep in Chu Tianjiao's eyes. What supreme heavenly lightning spirit root? I dug that out with my own hands from the body of my sworn brother Ye Chen, who couldn't recover from his setback. But so what? The cultivation world was a place where the strong ate the weak, and today he was the true child of destiny. Brother Tianjiao, a delicate, charming call drifted over as Liu Ruyan, wearing a grand red phoenix coronet and ceremonial robes, walked over gracefully. She used to be Ye Chen's fiancée, betrothed before they were even born. But on the day Ye Chen had his spirit root dug out, she unhesitatingly tore up the marriage contract and threw herself into Chu Tianjiao's embrace. Ruyan, you look so beautiful today. Chu Tianjiao pulled Liu Ruyan into his arms, stating proudly, "You made the most correct choice. Following that useless cripple, you could only struggle in the mud. But following me, this divine sun will take you to the absolute pinnacle of the great Tao." Ruyan understands. Liu Ruyan's eyes were filled with infatuation, followed by a flash of disdain. That Ye Chen, he's probably disappeared somewhere unknown by now. Being able to serve as a stepping stone for Brother Tianjiao is his honor. The auspicious hour has arrived. The resonant voice of the sacred land's great elder, echoing like 9 heavenly thunders, spread across the entire heavenly palace square. Will the divine son and divine consort please bow to heaven and earth? The tens of thousands of people in the square instantly fell silent, everyone's gaze focusing on the center of the sacrificial altar. Chu Tianjiao, looking radiant and triumphant, held Liu Ruyan's hand, preparing to kneel and bow to this heaven and earth. Right at this moment of utmost anticipation, when the atmosphere had reached its absolute peak, a sudden change occurred. Rumble! The originally cloudless 9-heaven sky suddenly let out a massive boom, sounding as if the heavens were being ripped apart. Immediately after, the sky above the entire 9-heavens sacred land instantly turned into a pitch-black, ink-like, deathly silence. Under the utterly horrified gazes of all the guests, a pitch-black streak of light, thick as 100 zhang, fell like a world-destroying meteor. Surpassing the limit of the naked eye, it tore through the atmosphere, carrying an ear-piercing sonic boom as it ruthlessly smashed right toward the exact center of the heavenly palace square. Who dares act so insolently in the 9-heaven sacred land? Several sacred land elders roared in fury, simultaneously bringing out their soul formation realm magical treasures in an attempt to intercept it. However, the moment they made contact, crack, crack! Those supposedly indestructible soul formation magical treasures shattered instantly like brittle paper. Bang! An earth-shattering, muffled explosion rang out as that streak of light smashed heavily less than 3 feet in front of Chu Tianjiao and Liu Ruyan. A violent shockwave, like a Category 12 hurricane, directly lifted the top-grade mutton-fat jade paved on the ground into the air. Thousands of guests with slightly weaker cultivations had their auras instantly destabilized, being blown away like rolling gourds. When the dust settled, tens of thousands of top-tier big shots present simultaneously sucked in a breath of cold air, their eyeballs almost popping out. The thing that had smashed the Sacred Land's ceremonial altar to pieces was actually a pitch-black coffin, 3 zhang long, forged entirely from deep-sea profound ice iron. And on the surface of the coffin, written in blood-red paint, were 3 massive words: Chu Tianjiao. Insolent! Chu Tianjiao stumbled back a step in shock at the sudden turn of events, and then his face instantly twisted, erupting with an earth-shattering roar of fury. To send this kind of thing on the day of my grand wedding? This is taking the face of the 9 heavens sacred land and trampling it into the ground. Zing. Before the sacred land's powerhouses could make a move, 2 blinding, heaven-shaking sword lights abruptly tore through the black clouds in the sky. A man and a woman stepped through the void and descended. The man was dressed entirely in black, holding a seemingly ordinary iron sword. Yet his entire body erupted with a violent blood-chai force akin to a primordial ferocious beast. That terrifying extreme Tao pressure even crushed the space around him, twisting and warping it. The woman was dressed in snow white, her breathtakingly beautiful face as cold as frost. They both possessed the aura of the soul formation realm. 18-year-old soul formation realm cultivators? How is this possible? The entire eastern wilderness doesn't produce 1 in a million years. How come 2 showed up at once today? The crowd screamed in terror. Yi Chen? When Chu Tianjiao finally got a clear look at the black-clad youth's face, his originally furious expression looked as if he had been struck by lightning, and he let out a miserable, ghostly shriek. Beside him, Liu Ruyan was so terrified her legs gave out, directly collapsing onto the ground, her perfectly applied makeup instantly turning deathly pale. Impossible. This is impossible. Weren't you stripped of your spirit root? Weren't you a useless cripple? What right do you have to reach the soul formation realm? Chu Tianjiao's Tao heart madly shook at this moment. However, what caused the souls of everyone present to truly tremble was still yet to come. Roar. Accompanied by a terrifying dragon roar that sounded like it could shatter the stars, the sea of clouds churned and the firmament split open. A massive creature over 10,000 zhang long, covered entirely in blinding golden scales and radiating a pure, authentic true dragon's might, forcibly squeezed its way out of the void. The terrifying pressure of a great vehicle-stage demon emperor instantly cascaded down like a heavenly river, crushing tens of thousands of people present to their knees in unison, unable to even lift their heads. A true dragon? Is this the pure-blooded true dragon from the legends? However, when the crowd forcefully endured the bone-splitting agony and looked up in horror, They saw a scene they would never forget for the rest of their lives. Their worldviews completely shattered in this instant. Right between the dragon horns on the head of that 10,000 Jang true dragon, capable of destroying heaven and earth, there was actually an extremely ordinary, even somewhat dilapidated bamboo rocking chair placed there. A white-clad man was lying comfortably on the rocking chair, holding a cup of still-steaming fragrant tea in one hand, while his other hand casually patted the head of that great vehicle stage true dragon as if petting an obedient puppy. "Good boy, don't bark so loudly, you're interrupting Master's tea time," I said softly. That fiercely terrifying true dragon actually acted like a startled loach, immediately shutting its mouth, and even ingratiatingly rubbing its head against the edge of the rocking chair. Dead silence. The entire venue fell as silent as a graveyard, and under the highly anticipated gaze of the masses, Ye Chen didn't look up at the terrifying godlike man in the sky. Instead, he descended from the sky like a meteor, landing heavily right on top of that pitch-black coffin. Bang! Ye Chen shattered the indestructible coffin lid with a single stomp. The long sword in his hand pointed straight at the trembling Chu Tianjiao below, the killing intent in his eyes almost tearing the heavens apart. "Chu Tianjiao!" Ye Chen's voice echoed like a death warrant from the nine nethers in everyone's ears. "I don't want my spirit root back. Today I only want your life." Bang! That pitch-black, deep-sea, profound ice-iron coffin let out a mournful whine under Ye Chen's foot, its surface covered in spiderweb-like cracks. Ye Chen held a seemingly ordinary iron sword, the tip pointing right at Chu Tianjiao in the center of the altar, his body's blood qi fully awakened like a primordial, ferocious beast. That pure physical pressure even roasted the surrounding void until it twisted. Quiet. In the massive heavenly palace square, tens of thousands of top-tier giants and great emperors from all over the eastern wilderness were completely silenced, like ducks grabbed by their necks, unable to make even the slightest sound. Everyone was stupefied. They looked at Ye Chen standing on the coffin, then at the frost-cold Su Qing Han, and finally raised their heads to look up at the nine heavens, at that great vehicle stage true dragon suppressing the firmament, and at me lying on its head leisurely drinking tea. Madness. This world has gone completely mad. Ye Chen. The muscles on Chu Tianjiao's face twitched madly. His originally handsome face was now twisted like an evil ghost. As the dignified divine son of the nine heavens' sacred land on the day of his grand wedding, to be sent this kind of coffin by an ant he had once trampled beneath his feet. This was an ultimate humiliation. This was throwing his face onto the ground and trampling on it. Good, very good. Chu Tianjiao laughed out of extreme anger, his eyes shooting out substantial purple lightning bolts. A piece of trash who had his spirit root dug out by me and was kicked out of the sacred land, like a wild dog actually dares to come clamor at the divine son's, wedding ceremony. Although I don't know what evil sorcery you use to restore your cultivation, in front of me, you will forever remain a bug I can crush at will. Rumble! The moment his words fell, Chu Tianjiao completely erupted. He didn't even wait for the sacred land elders to intervene. He wanted to personally tear this guy to pieces inch by inch in front of all the heroes of the world to prove his invincible Dao heart. Myriad lightning heavenly prison. Kill! Chu Tianjiao roared into the sky. His early soul formation cultivation poured out unreservedly, and the supreme heavenly lightning spirit root within his body, which originally belonged to Ye Chen, erupted with blinding purple gold light. Above the nine heavens, tens of thousands of violent heavenly lightning bolts thick as water vats instantly condensed. These lightning bolts intertwined in midair, transforming into 1,000 jang-long, lifelike, world-destroying lightning dragon. Carrying the heavenly might to destroy everything, it opened its maw toward Ye Chen and lunged down viciously to kill him. Is this the power of the supreme heavenly lightning spirit root? Too terrifying. Under this strike, even a mid-soul formation stage-old monster would die with regrets. That kid is done for. Under the divine son's heaven-shaking strike, he will definitely be severely wounded. The surrounding big shots retreated in terror, afraid of being caught in the terrifying aftershocks of the lightning. Liu Ruyan, who was slumped on the ground, felt a glimmer of hope reignite in her eyes. Yes, Brother Tianjiao is invincible. How could that useless cripple possibly be a match for Brother Tianjiao? Go die, Ye Chen. As long as you disappear, I will still be the high and mighty divine consort. However, facing that 1,000 Jang lightning dragon capable of destroying heaven and earth, Ye Chen, standing on the coffin, didn't dodge even the slightest bit. His mouth even hooked into an incredibly cruel, incredibly contemptuous cold smile. Using my spirit root to strike me? Chu Tianjiao, who gave you the courage? Whoosh! Ye Chen moved. He didn't even use the sword in his hand. Instead, he directly stabbed the sword into the ground beneath his feet and then violently clenched his right fist. At the moment he clenched his fist, a golden aura, pure to the extreme, detonated within his body like a blazing sun. Ancient, desolate, sacred body, major completion might. Ye Chen stomped his legs fiercely, and the profound ice-iron coffin beneath his feet instantly exploded into powder. His entire body transformed into a golden meteor that tore through heaven and earth, actually advancing instead of retreating. Meeting that 1,000 Jang lightning dragon head-on, he threw a punch straight up. Seeking death? Daring to resist heavenly lightning with your physical body? Chu Tianzhao sneered repeatedly, but in the next second, the smile on his face instantly froze, his pupils shrinking to the size of pinpricks. Crack. There was no earth-shattering spiritual energy collision, only the ultimate crushing of pure physical power. Under the horrified and terrified gazes of tens of thousands of people in the square, Ye Chen's fist, wrapped in golden light, acted like a primordial divine hammer capable of blowing up stars, ruthlessly smashing directly into the lightning dragon's head. That thousand Zhang lightning dragon, condensed by the supreme heavenly lightning spirit root and claiming to be able to severely injure anyone in the same tier, was like fragile glass the moment it touched Ye Chen's fist. From head to tail, it shattered inch by inch. The sky full of purple lightning was directly crushed into nothingness by the violent blood qi carried in that single punch. What? Chu Tianzhao screamed, losing his voice as cold sweat instantly soaked his entire body. Too weak! You are so weak you can't even pique my interest. An icy voice exploded right by Chu Tianzhao's ear. Unknowingly, Ye Chen had already pierced through the lightning storm like a ghost, appearing right in front of Chu Tianzhao. Those cold, bloodthirsty eyes were staring deadly at him. You are also in the soul formation realm? And this physical body? How is this possible? Chu Tianzhao was terrified to the core. Under the threat of death, he frantically channeled the spiritual energy in his body, roaring loudly, 9 dragons' profound gold shield. Protect me! A supreme defensive magical treasure, radiating blinding golden light and carved with 9 golden dragons, instantly floated above Chu Tianzhao's head. It cast down 10,000 streaks of golden light, firmly shielding him within. A supreme magical treasure. That's a supreme treasure capable of blocking a full-powered strike from a void refinement realm ancestor. A knowledgeable old monster cried out in alarm. Ha 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 ha, Ye Chen. You can't break my defense. I am the Divine Sun. My foundations are endless. What do you have to compete with me? Chu Tianzhao, hiding inside the light shield, had just breathed a sigh of relief and was preparing to laugh wildly.